All right, more disassembly on the 900 R. I'll post up some pictures of what the carbs look like when I got them. These are the carbs off of the 98. Telltale is the, I believe it's the throttle positioning sensor here. So, slides were stuck. I'm just putting the diaphragms through. So what I ended up doing is ultrasonic cleaning the entire lot. The bulls had a bunch of dried gasoline in here. It was really crusty. The jets were pretty much every single one of them was plugged. I sent the boots through. They're getting a little bit hard, but I think they should do the trick. The only thing is I do have new float bolt gaskets on order. These ones are, I'd be rolling the dice here for this to leak fuel. And then these ones are still pretty decent, but these I believe come with a set for new gaskets. I believe the drains get new plugs, or sorry, O-rings. Otherwise, what else? So slides were stuck for sure. I believe this is the enriching, or maybe the choke. All these were basically seized solid. So the bar went across here and nothing happened. So that's all working now. And then last but not least, everything is very, very clean. So I sent a bunch of air through here, blew everything out, made sure there was no water left in it, took it inside the house to make sure it dries. And otherwise, yeah, everything is nice and squeaky clean, basically. Floats will just need a quick wipe. You can still see a little bit of sticky gas residue on that. These ones were stuck in there as well, so these should be okay now too, that go with the floats. Otherwise, that's a different thing for that thing. That's going to be a separate video on that because I got my new vacuum tool. Last but not least, these thinner hoses feel pretty good. These ones here, man, they are so crusty. And I believe these are the main fuel lines. So I'll likely, yeah, they are the main fuel lines because they go to the fuel filter. Duh. So I'll be replacing those because this is just, it's too far gone. So, yeah. Well, another cleaning session with the ultrasonic cleaner. This time around, shocks. So I had two shocks to choose from. Obviously, the 900 R shock. I had a 954 shock. Unfortunately, there's the body of the 954, spring from the 954, spring from the 900, 900 bits here, 954 bits here. 25-year-old oil. Disgusting to say the least, and it smelt even worse. At any rate, the plan is I have to use the longer body of the 900. Here's the expansion chamber that came with it, if you want to call it a or reservoir. It's got a weird reverse bladder, so nitrogen sits, this literally sits like this. Hose comes in here, you get your compression adjusters here. So the oil sits inside the bladder. Never seen that before. I typically see a setup like this where the nitrogen sits in the bladder and the oil sits on the outside. Very little amount of oil in the reservoir, right? So the idea is, say if this was a WP shock, that's really all I know how to work on. You'd have less than 10% of it of oil. That basically the piston would sit here, and this whole thing would be basically nitrogen, and this would sit on oil. So when you had a big hit, you'd compress on the nitrogen, and you'd have lots of pressure to push back on the oil. At any rate, so yeah, so I have to basically use this. Rod diameters are about the same. The shim stack on this thing is just absolutely bizarre. I'm going to take this apart and take a quick measurement, but you can see how this basically tapers like a regular shim stack, starts thick from the valve, works to be narrower towards the nut. Same thing here, thick at the valve, narrows down. And this one is kind of the same, but this is basically the same thickness shims. At any rate, so The bump stop is ratty, so I'm going to swap those two. I may end up basically, I'll double check the thickness of this. I believe it's the same. We'll likely swap these together, keep the shaft, but I'm going to have to pull this head seal and put it here because the diameters are different. So that's the only thing I really need to swap. Oh yeah, and this cover, unfortunately, is looking a little bit ratty, but is what it is. And then last fun part is to try to figure out how to fill this thing with my little vacuum setup because I don't have the right connection for that. Yeah, we'll keep you posted. Meantime, between time, like I said, I'll throw this in, clean up this mess. I got the 1090 apart, waiting for some lights, and I gotta waiting till all that shows up, wire that in, put the earbox back in. Otherwise, this hasn't really moved because, like I said, I've been busy with the 1090 on the suspension front. Yeah. Okay, so sent both the shocks through the ultrasonic cleaner. Just wanted to, I didn't actually take a picture of these before I threw them into the cleaner. These were gross. They were on the either side of the valve on the 900. After you're taken through the cleaner and you give them a decent wipe, they actually come out pretty good. So yes, I mean, if you're refurbishing an older shock, it's worthwhile to actually take the stack apart because the crud that's stuck in between is pretty gross. So anyways, so here's the 954 bottom of the shaft. I reused the 954 bump stop. This is the 900 cap, 900 seal head, and then I just basically took the 954 shim stack. I found it really odd that these shims, all of these same diameter shims, were on the top side of the valve. So I'm just going to go with something a little bit less aggressive, which is the 954. Obviously, I can't reuse this because you can see the piston is physically bigger. Yeah, and last but not least, so this was the expansion chamber, and the bladder sat in like this. So when you were filling it with nitrogen, the nitrogen was actually pushing in on the bladder with oil, which I find really odd. So what I'm going to do, in order to keep the seals, I'm going to pick one of the two bladders, and I'm going to cut this one here to basically make an O-ring around this so it keeps the seal. And then from the back side, this regular bladder will go in, and the inside of it will sit with nitrogen. I should be able to just to heat up one of my hoses a little bit and kind of tie wrap it on here. So that's how I'm going to bleed the shock from air. And yeah, I'll film that too, see how it goes. Last but not least, CBR spring on the left. Sorry, 900 spring on the left, 954 on the right. Same height, just about. So that should be not a non-issue. So I'm going to reassemble this, make sure it's got no slop. And I'll pick back up with you on the bleeding cycle. Okay, that's done. No slop, perfection. This is what I came up with. So there's my sacrificial bladder. There's a seal I made from it, expertly cut. That's going to slide in there, circlip. Then this came from the 900 RR. I mean, it only sees 45 psi of pressure, so we'll see if this hose setup holds up. This is going to go into the bleeding tool, and then once this is all bled out, I'm going to basically pull that out. There's going to be put an atmosphere and just basically push the piston down a little bit and draw out the fluid. Sink this guy in. I'm going to have a bit of a mess with the fluid, and then nitrogen through this guy here, and we should be good to go. All right, well, that's not the mess from the shock, but it took a little while to bleed this guy. The setup was okay. I don't do these on a very regular basis, so it's mostly WP stuff for me, which the bleeder has proven itself. But anyways, charges up with nitrogen. It's holding nicely. It does shocky things, meaning it goes, when you compress it down, there's no knocking, so there's a nice smooth compression when you compress it down by yourself. And then it comes back up by itself, no questions asked. So was a bit of a faff. Took a few hours at least to just basically reshim it, swap the two shock shafts around, bleed it. But yeah, it's done. I'm going to stick it on the bike and I'll bounce around, make sure it does what it's meant to do. And that's a kind of annoying, dirty job done, but not much in the way of replacement shocks. I did find one in Vancouver for 45 bucks. Might have the guy, might buy it from him anyways, just in case. But if this does what's advertised, I got no point for a spare. God knows I got plenty of spares for this bike. Anyways, there's the shock. Done. Yeah. Shock installed in. Set the compression and rebound at about 2/3 from, 1/3 from fully closed, and preloads sitting at about a third in. Bounced around on it a few times. Feels pretty decent. So I'm going to say that's job done.